if banks that's an issue of regulation, self-regulation or government regulation. A centralized banking system is just government regulation. That's another, a whole other discussion, like mandated insurance, right? I mean, that's, you're sitting at a table with an expert on free banking. He can help you there. Okay, there's historical problems of why we have Keynesian central planning. Okay, first off, the Great Depression was misdiagnosed. Okay, what happened is during the 20s there was expansionary monetary policy. The Fed was created in 1913, started operating in 1914. After World War I, the Fed was able to get us over the 1920-21 depression, recession. The Fed handled that fine because Europe was destroyed after World War I, so the United States had big export markets. So it looked like so we grew our way out of that recession. So it looked like the Fed helped the economy. So during the 20s, the Fed inflated the money, and we had huge bubbles. Okay, we had a huge bubble during the 20s created by the Fed. So the Fed saw in the big stock market gains, 1928, then collapsed and then started decreasing the monetary increases and raising interest rates to try to pop the stock market bubble in 1928. It worked, and they kept the monetary. They kept a contractionary monetary policy throughout 1929, 1930, 1930, 31, 32, and that created the Depression. The Fed contractionary monetary policy created the initial Great Depression, okay? And was also, there was a gold standard tied, a contractionary international gold standard. Fixed exchange rates don't work because it doesn't allow the gains from trade to be made. So you had a contractionary monetary policy, you had fixed exchange rates, you had the Great Depression. So people say, oh, the government needs to do something, the government needs to do something. When in fact, had the Fed not deflated the money and had we not been on fixed exchange rates, we would not be in a recession. So the whole fallacy of Keynesian economics, of fiscal stimulus, was based on a misdiagnosed problem in the first place. Okay. People didn't know that. So, 1938 Pump Priming Act. I won't get into the National Industrial Recovery Act or the Agriculture Adjustment Act during the Roosevelt administration, which basically reduced, which basically created government monopolies, didn't allow prices to adjust, so I won't get into that. Only after 1933, when people started to pull out of the gold standard, did the economy start growing again. France pulled out, started growing. England pulled out, started growing. In the United States, we had the National Industrial Recovery Act and the Agriculture Adjustment Act, which then caused in 1937-38 the Roosevelt recession. And then 1938, the Pump Priming Act. Okay. So, recent historiography consensus is that the Works Progress Administration, which built, I grew up in a small town in New Mexico, and I played football on a stadium that was built during the Great Depression. You know, they built baseball stadiums and all over the country, dams, county roads. So basically the federal government became intrusive into people's lives. Not intrusive. I think it was intrusive, but became accepted part of people's lives because it was personalized. They saw the federal government creating all of these works progress, all of these public works, and that then acculturated the American people to the ability of the central government to manage the economy. And that then, instead of people rejecting fiscal stimulus, they think, oh, throughout the generations, Roosevelt got us out of the Depression, the Works Progress Administration, look at all the great works. So no one questions the fiscal stimulus and the fact that it was all based on misdiagnosed reasons for the Great Depression. Okay, fiscal stimulus today. Okay, the Bush tax cuts, right? If tax cuts are a good idea for fiscal stimulus, why not just make them permanent, right? Why does it have to be just a short term, right? Keynes was famous for saying in the long term we're all dead, right? But in the long term we're not all dead, right? You know, we have children, so, you know, we keep reproducing ourselves. We're not dead. So, you know, that's kind of a cynical way to look at it. So basically, ontologically, people need the comfort that the government is there to protect them in the short term without realizing the long-term harm that this causes. Okay, today, after the bailouts, we have more than 50% of the world's banking sector controlled by the government. More than 50% of the world's banking systems are controlled by governments. This is from the Economist magazine. That's socialism. When the means of production are owned by the government, that's socialism. Okay. Central planning, or Keynesian economics. There's nothing wrong with socialism in small numbers, right? 150 people, collective society is where we started, right? But when you get huge depersonalized relationships, you get rent seeking, and government grows from 5% before World War I. Federal government was less than 5% after before World War I. Now government is greater than 40%. Central planning, or Keynesian economics, is akin to fascism, where means of production of the assets are privately owned, but the government decides what is produced and where and when. And that's the military-industrial complex, that's the welfare state. So what we have is a combination of socialism and fascism, and that's fiscal stimulus. In conclusion, I have tried to show that the current culture and economic situation is due to the fallacy of aggregation and people's innate inability to understand complex social organization like the modern state. This fear then has caused 70 years of almost unquestioned central planning, which has reached its pinnacle today with socialization of the banking sector and a call for the same type of fallacious government jobs programs that were used to cure a misdiagnosed problem 70 plus years ago.